Ta-da!
And welcome to the Belfast International Children's Festival. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to this afternoon's panel. It's called Going Digital and Staying Digital. So just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. This session will actually be recorded, so if you don't wish to be seen, please turn off your camera. In fact, can I ask everybody to turn off their camera at the beginning? That way you can all focus on the panellists that are speaking, and also mute yourself. And then when we might call you to ask a question, and then you can ask that live. So first up, we've got a short video to play, so we might begin with that.
Ta-da!
There we go. I didn't realise it was that short. So, my name is Noel Jordan and I will be your host for this afternoon. I'm the Festival Director of the Edinburgh International Children's Festival. So today we're talking to 3 artistic directors and 1 festival director about the whole concept of going digital. Has this been a great thing for our performing arts industry, or is it something that's been incredibly challenging and something that we've had to adapt to? On one hand, you could say that it's been excellent for making work accessible to audiences anywhere and everywhere, as long as they have access to smartphones and computers. I think it's something that we won't actually really know the end results of or have a real sense of our time and place until we can look back on this with some perspective. At the moment, we're right in the middle of it. Okay, with no further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker this afternoon. Paul, if I can ask you to turn on your camera. We're going to speak to Paul McEneaney. He's the Artistic Director of Cahoots NI. And welcome, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well, Noel. Thank you. It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody, albeit virtually.
Absolutely. Now, Paul, I wonder if you could just begin by telling people a little bit about the company, and also, I know you've been working in this sphere or this genre very actively over the past year, and in fact, it's opened up a whole new pathway of work for the company. Could you just contextualise that for everybody, please?
Absolutely. So I'm the Artistic Director of Cahoots NI. We're a Belfast-based theatre company. We produce large to mid-scale theatre shows. We concentrate on the visual potential of theatre, and my own personal passion is the old popularity of magic and illusion. So I always try to combine an element of that with our live stage work. We tour throughout Ireland, the UK, and internationally. And when the pandemic struck, we were about to start an Irish tour here of Secrets of Space. We were in the middle of touring North America with a show called Penguins, and we'd just finished an extensive tour of mainland China, Macau, and Hong Kong with Shush, We Have a Plan. So once we got everything sort of all our housekeeping in place, I started to think about how can we respond to the pandemic, and I knew I wanted to make something that was responsive to that. Really, because I didn't think our work filmed would work online. We use, as I said earlier, we rely heavily on theatrical illusion, and that's a form that just doesn't work online.
Absolutely, Paul. I wonder if you can just kind of talk about how you began kind of developing that first work and the response it's had, and what has that early indication given you as an artist? What kind of encouragement has it given you to go forward with this form?
Okay, I mean, I think I was really clear. I think I had the opportunity to watch a lot of work before I started to create this piece of work that we're obviously going to talk a little bit more about, the University of Wonder and Imagination. So having seen work online and having religiously watched the National Theatre every Thursday night with my family, I realized that it was too easy to turn the TV off and go and make a cup of coffee. So I wanted to create something that was unique for these times, but also unique in response. I wanted it to be live and interactive. I think that's a thing that is essential in terms of the theatre that I want to produce to work online. So I wanted a show that really allowed the audiences to make, I guess, live decisions that would change the action and the direction of the piece. I wanted, as always, to play with theatrical illusion online, where things could happen that the audience couldn't believe were possible. And I wanted that to work in a living room, and I wanted it to work in a school environment. And I wanted to create a show online that had really high production standards. I wanted to make sure there was real sets, real actors, lighting, professional sound design, all of that. And what we came up with was the University of Wonder and Imagination. And I'm wondering, is that a good place to sort of just let everybody see it for a minute rather than me talk about it?
I think that's the best way. Let's cut to a video now. Thanks, Paul.
No problem.
Paul, I have to say the piece looks $1 million. I was lucky enough to catch it as part of the Barbaro Festival last October, and it is coming up in our festival in May. It looks like presenters and programmers around the world are grabbing a hold of this, and I'm not surprised. Can you give us a little bit more of indication where else it's going in the next few months?
Yeah, I mean, we started, as you said, we started way back in September. And thankfully the show is still running. It's running until the end of June. So at the start of January, we started a North American tour. So we've literally been all over the world with this show, because what's brilliant about it is you can be in Las Vegas, as we were for 2 weeks, a couple of weeks back, and then 3 days in Dungannon. It's brilliant. I mean, that's one of the real, and Dungannon, for those that don't know, is just down the road from where I am here in Armagh. So that's what's been brilliant. That's really been the success of it. I mean, I think the thing that I'm most proud of about this production is that, we brought 5 actors, 3 technicians, and all of our key creative set designers into a room in September, and those performers and technicians are still employed and will be until the end of June. So I think that's the thing. We've managed to sustain the company. We've managed to create work that is very popular at this moment in time. And strategically, we are still connecting with venues that we would have been touring to live, as it were, right now. And that's a really important thing for us. But there was a huge gamble. I mean, we moved out of our existing offices in Belfast. We were in Royal Avenue, right in the centre of town. We acquired a new, much larger premises in the middle of this madness that really allowed us to turn disused office spaces into a series of separate studios, spaces that actors and designers, technicians could all work safely. So there was a huge gamble. Yeah,
I totally can see that. And it is a credit to you and the company that the work is having this longevity. But I want to kind of now move towards what you see as the future of this type of work. Do you think it's something that you as a company are interested in pursuing? Or do you think it's, oh no, we're only doing this for time and place? It suits us now as a company, but for the future, this is not where we're looking at heading. Where do you see it?
I have made my best piece of work for online theatre. And I don't have the appetite to go back into a room and create a brand new piece of work in studios for people just to watch at home. I don't have that. I don't have that passion, and if I'm not passionate about what I'm making, I can guarantee it's not going to be the best piece of work it could be. So instead, I mean, we've taken on another huge gamble. We've taken on a massive warehouse, and we're creating a walk-through installation that is a hybrid of what it is we are currently doing. So we're using a lot of the technology, but we're actually bringing audiences to an event. Now that the audience will walk through this in a bubble, whether we have lockdown or not, that's how the project's going to work best. Small groups entering into, it's called the Grim Hotel. So they arrive at a hotel, they go to reception. A little like the university, they will randomly select room numbers and they will go to those rooms and they will experience theatrical happenings. So I'm seeing it very much as a hybrid as to where we are right now, but I'm seeing it as a leap of faith as to where we're going to be when we open this in September, October time.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate your honesty about talking about how you see the form and your interest as an artist, but it's also informing the next stages of your work and contextualizing it around what may be possible in a socially distanced world, I think is quite crucial. Paul, that's all we've got for the moment, but we're going to invite you back and be part of a panel discussion in a little bit longer. So I thank you for now, and I might get you to put your turn off your camera. And in a moment, I'll invite our next speaker. But I just want to acknowledge we have the fabulous Heather Marsden here. I think I got your surname right. I should have introduced you at the beginning. She's doing our BSL interpretation. And anyone who would who's wanting to follow her, please go up to the corner, top right-hand corner, and you can pin Heather's image so she remains on your screen if you haven't already done that. Now, if you've got any questions while we're chatting, please do place them in the chat box and we'll endeavour to pick them up and invite you to ask those later on when we have the whole panel on board. Okay, moving along. Next we have Rosie Heafford she's the Artistic Director of Secondhand Dance in England. She may be well known to many of you. Rosie is a part of this festival. Rosie, if I can just ask you to turn on your camera. Yep. Hi, Rosie. So great to see your face and your fantastic background.
Thank you.
Rosie, I know you have been really incredibly busy during this period. I think most of us know, we've all seen the Grass films are popping up at multiple locations, particularly around the UK, but also your Night Tree films as well. I'm wondering if you can talk about that point within which the company decided, let's make use of our assets. And, you know, you've got considerable assets that were already rehearsed, but you made a decision to film them in a very particular outdoor setting in a beautiful way, and then you've had to distribute those. Can you just chat a little bit about how that the company's worked in that way?
Sure. So when lockdown happened, I was actually about 4 weeks out of maternity leave. So I was sort of emerging from this period of like completely other life transforming things happening, and coming back into a place of like wondering what the company was about to do next, and organizational development and change, and then the world changed. So we actually paused for quite a long time and didn't really do anything other than think about what we were going to do. Then whilst my producer was on holiday, I went and did a day of R&D with one of our dancers that knows the Grass show really well, and just filmed some things on my camera. And I found a passion for looking at things in that visual filmic way. I think I was really keen that we weren't just going to film stage shows and present them online, because that just didn't feel, there's sensory things in our stage shows that just don't translate. And I feel like dance for screen is very different for dance in a live setting. So I've been very particular about using the choreography that we have developed. So we're not starting from new in a time where there's not much funding around, but really picking bits that are going to look beautiful on screen and still inspire movement and play among the young audiences that we serve.
Yeah, I have to say, if anybody hasn't seen any of these films, please do check them out at the festival. They're very bite-sized, and I know you've made a conscious decision about them being accessible in that way. You could literally watch them on a mobile phone, kind of on a commute, or on a walk, or on a larger screen, and really enjoy the visual splendour. I'm going to throw the question to you now about, is this something that you're interested in as an artist moving forward into the future? Like Paul was saying, as things begin to open up, his direction is going to change slightly. He's going to take some learning from this period and go elsewhere. What do you see as your journey with Secondhand Dance and the digital platform?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we made the decision to start making films was actually about the company's ethos moving forward. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with a disease and have gone through a process of identifying as a disabled artist. And that's led me into really looking at access in a completely different way. So that was really key, that actually we were viewing these films as to make them as accessible as possible, but also as like a different access point to the world of the show. So the shows that we're creating have a live show, but they also have a film version that people can watch in their homes if they can't travel to theatres. And I think that's going to be really important for me going forward, actually, that we have multiple entrances into the world, the artistic worlds that we're looking at creating. So, and I've enjoyed it. I've really loved the film process. I think someone said the other day, it's like the control freak in you being able to really decide what an audience is going to see. And actually that's very different to the way I make stage shows. So it's quite nice to have these two extremes.
Yeah, I'm really glad you picked up about that point about access on multiple levels, because obviously, particularly with people with, profound and multiple learning disabilities during this time, it hasn't been a point in our history where they've been one of the most shielded members of our community for good reason. And creating artworks like this has enabled a very direct and immediate access point. And also in terms of a carbon footprint way, if you think about your ability to kind of get around the world and travel, and, that's incredibly tiring and not great for the environment. The films can go much further than we can ever go, and in a much more kind of intelligent and sustainable way. So do you think this will always be a component then of your future work? So for example, with your work Touch, have you got plans to kind of expand that out into this platform? Because Touch, I know we've been talking about this work for a while. It is so much about the human form. Yeah.
I haven't yet visualized what Touch could be in a digital mode, but what we are looking at the moment, we've just got funding from the British Council to work with a Canadian partner, the We Festival, on how we might create a Canadian version, how we might work digitally over Zoom or some sort of technology to work with Canadian dancers and develop a model where we can teach choreography or teach, because it's not, Touch is a very improvised show, but teach concepts online. So we'll let you know how that process goes. We're just right at the beginning of working out how it will go, but it's a different version, I guess, of working digitally. But Touch, it needs the human connection. It's not, doesn't quite do it over film.
It is great to think, though, that through digital pathways, we're suddenly at a point where international collaborations that weren't previously as accessible to us are suddenly becoming more so. And it's interesting with Canada that their government seems to have invested heavily. Everybody I'm speaking to at the moment seems to, I've been on a panel for 6 months talking to Canadian presenters and artists, and like there is this passion to really reach out and connect with people around the world and find ways that they can keep relationships and conversations alive. I wonder if this is a good point for us to show some of your work, Rosie.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Cut to a video. Yes, stunning. Lots of comments in the chat room, if you can see them, Rosie, about how beautiful these films are. I wanted to ask you one final question, not really on topic, but I think you can't not watch these works and be aware of the multicultural or BIPOC casting. And is that a very deliberate kind of conscious decision that you've made with these works, because it has an impact?
Yeah, absolutely. We and particularly because I was thinking about making two sets of films at the same time, I was really conscious that I didn't want to have an only white cast throughout all of the films, and really make use of the dancers that we've worked with in across the different projects. But yeah, it's definitely important to me that children are seeing different faces on screen, especially when you're in lockdown and you're potentially only seeing, you know, parent carer faces. It's really important to see different people.
I think that's to be applauded. So would you say the digital sphere is kind of a new playground for you that's exciting and full of possibilities, or what yeah, how are you approaching it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm learning lots about green screen at the moment, because that's the next sort of R&D that we're going to do. So it's a bit scary, but I'm also like learning film editing skills and learning more about my own artistic process, I think, and how, because I think very visually, that's translating onto screen, which I think is going to have an impact on live shows that we create in the future as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, I very much look forward to being in a theatre and seeing one of your live performances again, and also what your digital output will be. I think you've been on an incredible quick learning curve, and the end results so far, or the results so far, are stunning. So you're to be congratulated. So thanks, Rosie. We'll come back and chat with you in a moment. So our third speaker, Zoë Seaton, another local Northern Irish artist. So if you could just please turn on your camera. Zoë, hello. Zoë's the artistic director of Big Telly, one of the most prolific makers. I had a fantastic conversation with you, Zoë, the other day, and I was absolutely flabbergasted at the amount of work that you have been making over the past 12 months. Can you, in a kind of a nutshell, take us on that journey and share with the audience your digital journey?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I've got a tiny video which goes through, so we can show that. But we've made 9 shows and an app in the last year, all of which have been very different and about collaborating with different people, from AI companies to AR to game designers to cookery experts. So yeah, it's been a busy and an exciting time. But I'd just like to play the video just to go through it, and then we can chat through them after.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks, Zoe. I'm really glad you shared that, because in a nutshell, it gives people a snapshot of not only how active you've been, but the impact of the work. 10 to 12,000 people plus 100 artists. It is quite phenomenal, and the accolades are aplenty. Can you kind of take, what do you think therefore, I mean, there's so much to chat about, but what do you think are the big learnings for you over this past 12 months? Because when we spoke the other day, you know, I'd seen one of the really early works and it was this very homemade style work, but then I can see this progression and it has developed an aesthetic of its own. So how have you done that, and how have you taken socially isolated artists through this process all on Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really, really lucky, Noel, to work with like lots and lots of artists, and work with lots of different kind of disciplines. And I suppose we've learned a lot. You know, Sinead Owens, who is in the room, has become a Zoom wizard, and we've had a lot of, you know, fun and a lot of experiment. We were very keen that it would be interactive always, and very interested in what participation means, you know, and how we might step into an audience's home. So not just in creating a piece which exists on its own, but creating a piece which is kind of co-created, where the audience, like there's a bit in Operation Elsewhere where, you know, Nikki Harley says to people, you know, if you've got war paint, go and put it on now. And we just saw people running to their kitchens and getting mustard and getting ketchup and getting cushion covers off their, you know, people's hunger to be involved, and the agency Zoom has, because you can turn your cameras off and also just watch, became very interesting to us, you know, and the way I suppose that's developed, you know, the aesthetic has developed, but it feels like it's such a fluid platform for telling lots of different stories. Like Macbeth was a very crafted piece, but the recipes we've done, the cook-along shows, we felt that, you know, we kind of made those because they were very much a response to what we thought the world needed at that time at the end of January when things were bleak. So they were about joy and about everybody cooking together and eating together and dancing together. And each of those shows was about an hour long, but the actual kind of 80s discos lasted 3/4 of an hour after. And we just had extraordinary emails from people saying, this has been an experience which has brought us joy. Now, it's not theatre in the same way as Macbeth was theatre. It's a completely different experience, but I think we've been excited to see what's possible in terms of how we can connect with people and how we've been able to make virtual communities. And now we're moving in with three more projects before the end of March, which are again taking us into different spaces, and taking, you know, people's use of cameras into, you know, different parts of their homes and outside, and looking at work in neighbourhoods and how the digital mixes with that.
It's interesting, when we were talking earlier, you discussed about how the turnaround between one production and the next can be quite fast. And what I think that allows you to do, as you highlighted there, is how you can respond to the needs of the community, or you think, what is the zeitgeist at this moment? What is the thing that seems to be lacking that people need? Is it the shared space of the cooking space? Is it the dancing in the street? I mean, your mind must be constantly going on this, and clearly this is something the company are wanting to continue. That's where I'm kind of heading with this question. Is this where you see Big Telly kind of the direction for the future?
I mean, I think it's one of them. I mean, we are creating a digital venue called Brick Moon, which is going to be a maker space as well as a presenting space. You know, I'd like it to be that when you go into the gallery, there might be 8 artists, each of whom have a webcam on, and they're painting in their studios all over the world, and it's a chance to talk to them. You know, and I'm interested in process as well as product. You know, and I'm interested in, you know, you might go into a studio room and there might be a poet and a game designer and a cook working together, and you might come in and feed into that or just watch. Or so I'm interested in how we create processes around that, where there is an opportunity for new collaborations and clashes of disciplines that might not normally get put together. You know, that's what I think the opportunity has been for us, you know, to work with artists based in, you know, New York and, you know, and all over the place with different skills. It's been a real, you know, opportunity to work, to make different collaborations happen. But we also, you know, will be aware that when the world opens up, the appetite for Zoom theatre will be a different one, and it'll fulfill a different need. You know, when we're creating a project called the Bus Stop, which is a frictionless digital interface. It's like a bus stop, but it is a Zoom screen, and people will, and it brokers conversations, and it happens in the real world, and then there's a real project around that. So we're very interested in the mix. You know, the next project we're doing called Right Up Your Street, which there's a little clip of there, you know, involves neighbourhoods linked by WhatsApp groups, but there's also an AR experience as part of that. And, you know, we can control how the story is delivered with a mixture of live work and stuff that happens interactively and digitally. And I'm really interested in that, how we can make a show happen in a neighbourhood with 100 houses without worrying about sightlines, because different things are happening at different points. So it feels like we'll keep growing and keep developing, and everything we've learned will help us to kind of move forward to the next stage.
Absolutely. I think you and Paul, the work that you're producing has a similarity in that it is about a live connected experience. And I mean, and that's what has stood out for me when searching as a programmer, how can we have a moment where audience and performer are in the one space? And there are very few works around that do that and do that successfully. And it is, I mean, you know, anything can and does go wrong in that space as well. You have to be prepared to kind of improvise and go with the flow. And you seem to be only limited by the scale of your imagination. I am kind of in awe of your blueprint of what the future might look like. I suppose it sounds like you've moved so far away from traditional four walls theatre that just has no interest for you for the future. Is that right?
I mean, we weren't doing a lot of that anyway. We were doing a lot of game theatre and a lot of adventure theatre in towns and immersive work. So we were probably quite far. You know, we're doing less work in venues. We're still doing work in venues. But one of the shows we were running before lockdown was The Worst Cafe in the World, where the audience chose stories in a kind of disused cafe in the high street. And, you know, so we probably had moved quite far away, and we're using quite a lot of digital already. And I suppose this has just tipped the balance, and I think the balance will re-tip. But I mean, I think as well, we've been really lucky in that every piece has been a dialogue with an audience, and we've kept in very close contact with audiences. And, you know, like when we did The Tempest, like we were completely unprepared. I mean, it was, you know, early April, but we were completely unprepared for the extent to which that would provide a need for people to come together as a community. So we would have people ringing up and saying, look, you know, there's 8 of us in our family and we're all around the world and we want to come together, and can we be spotlit together? And we would go, of course. Or, you know, and we want to come because we want to see our cousins at the show. And that felt, we didn't realize that, you know. So and each show, it's kind of, you know, we've learned so much from where it answers a need for an audience. And that's what, you know, like when we did Recipe for Disaster, people started sending us their videos of them shopping for the ingredients and pictures of the shops they were, and pictures of their prep work and their setup, and then pictures of themselves getting ready and asking us to help them choose outfits, you know. And that was the kind of what was interesting. That became an event way outside the experience, which we hadn't anticipated. So that's what's been lovely about it, is it's had lots of pockets of possibilities that people have stepped into and told us what needs to happen next as well.
Well, I think you to be absolutely applauded for being open, because how many times are artists like, no, this is my work, and you're able to kind of respond to what people are saying, can we do this? And within this platform, you're able to go, yeah, we can make sure that your family is all connected in this moment, which, it makes total sense to me, because that was what going to the theatre was about. You go with family and friends, you share that experience together. Okay, so we might. Did you have another video? I've forgotten.
We have got a trailer for Operation Elsewhere, but I'm happy to move on if you're pushing.
Let's throw to that because it is in the festival and you're opening this evening, so it feels very timely. Let's go to that and then we'll bring on our final speaker. Thanks, Zoe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. I might get you to just turn your camera off and we'll ask Evelyn if you can turn on your camera. Now, when Evelyn DeBarra asked me as the director of Young at Art and the Belfast International Children's Festival to host this session, and did I know of any other speakers, I said, of course, you. We need to hear from you, Evelyn. We need to hear what it's like as a director to plan, and now you're in the midst of a digital festival, which you probably never thought you would ever be. I'm kind of moving towards the same thing here in Edinburgh for May. Can you take me through your thoughts and responses so far to this kind of an entire festival that's digital? We'll start with that. Are people responding? Do you think it's kind of fulfilling a kind of an audience need? And are they booking?
Well, the 2020 Belfast Children's Festival finished on the 11th of March last year, and we were really lucky. We just got under the wire before it really hit quite badly, and we consider ourselves very lucky with that. And I think at one stage early autumn, we actually thought we might be the first big event back in the city post, but obviously it became really clear as the autumn moved on, and then certainly when we got to December that was not going to be the case, because we'd even looked at a hybrid approach, because we knew that if we had to do live performances under social distancing, that the numbers would be so limited. We were concerned about reach and accessibility, so we were looking at a hybrid thing in which a piece would get fitted up, would get filmed for streaming, but would open for live performances first and then be streamed on the second weekend. But it wasn't to be either. But what was really key for me was that we continued to connect with our audiences, but also that we continued to connect those audiences with the festival and with our dark venues and with the city as well. So it was very important for me that it was, it was something that felt very authentically from Belfast as well. I was slightly worried that an online festival could become a little sterile, it could be from anywhere. So there was some research that was released last summer and then a little bit more afterwards, and our local audience research agency Thrive have published a report called Culture Beyond COVID, and basically within that 17% of the respondents had said that they are participating with arts and cultures online, and of those people who were actively engaging with digital performances, 79% of those were either live streamed performances or recordings of an event that had taken place post COVID, and 25% were interactive performances. So when I was sort of putting together the programme, then it was important for me that I had a mix so that we were trying to suit a lot of different audiences' needs. So I was looking for work that was maybe had been existing work that had been reimagined in a new format would be more relevant for audiences, you know, in lockdown. I'm thinking particular pieces like Potato Needs a Bath and White, the film. But also looking for things that had that digital live interactive element. And that's where we looked at University of Wonder and Operation Elsewhere as well. But for me, again, it was about that connection with the festival and with the city. So for that we have actually been creating some original content in which we have filmed 6 films of theatre pieces. And also there's been like our own version of Baby Rave is now Baby Rave at Home, and also a comedy show, Release the Baboons, from comedian Paul Curry. And it was about making original content in the venues where our audiences were booked originally to be. They would still perform in there, but that we've recorded for streaming. So that's been my approach so far. So when I was looking at, you know, what the opportunities, you know, because I think it's like, come on, what opportunities could we have with having a festival online? Because, like, I don't know, you know, because we've had this discussion before, the whole idea of an online festival really didn't float my boat, and I was very resistant to it and really was clinging on with the hope that we could be live. But my view is, you know, we can't be live at the minute. This is the best we can be, so we need to try to make it as good and as relevant for our audiences as possible. So I thought there's actually, you know, there's opportunities here that we should embrace. And the main opportunity, I think, was reach. It was about an opportunity to diversify and find new audiences. So that's why for our streamed work, I approached QFT, which is our local art house film theatre, the Queen's Film Theatre, because they had set up QFT Player, in which they were streaming films, obviously, because they were closed as well. So I approached them about a new partnership in which that we could stream the festival's work on their platform. And my hope with that is that we actually might also reach an audience that's not a traditional theatre audience. We might get people who are more used to seeing film. Certainly QFT would be one of the main exponents in Northern Ireland of the NT Live platform when audiences were able to go to cinemas to see that. So I thought there's an appetite there for streamed theatre work there. But I also thought particularly it would be about geographic reach as well, that we really had an opportunity to open the festival doors to friends, colleagues, families across the world. And I must say that has been successful. So we're just beyond the halfway point. And I spoke to Michael at QFT this morning and got some of the figures. So far, and this is on QFT Player alone. Obviously, we have a lot of performances that aren't on QFT Player. But on QFT Player alone, we've had over 2,200 views. And that has been from 18 different countries. So we've gone from Colombia to New Zealand, from Poland to Palestine. So, you know, that's been quite stunning for us as well. But also, you know, it's evident from our delegate programme as well. We've always had a delegate programme with the festival, and we would normally attract between sort of like 20 to 30 delegates to Belfast to come and enjoy our local work. And this year we have nearly 70. So, you know, again, it's much easier to reach, presenters and programmers from across the world. And hopefully that will open up the fantastic work that we have for young audiences being created right here in Northern Ireland, and open that up to a new audience of presenters and hopefully get them interested in the work that we're creating. But I think the other advantage that I could see was actually one of accessibility and inclusion. And I think that what the digital domain has done is that it has opened up theatre work to people who maybe wouldn't have been able to engage with the festival previously, be that they were in rural or remote locations, or they maybe had caring responsibilities, or that they maybe had disabilities that were making it difficult to attend. So we as festival programmers and venues try our hardest to remove those barriers to participation, but for some we haven't been successful in the past, and I think that's something that we need to take on board. Noel, I know that at one of the delegate events that you had in Imaginate, there was a disabled artist that spoke and said that she's engaged with arts and culture so much more since the pandemic than she's ever been able to before, and we can't ignore that. You know, that's something that we have to address moving forward. But there's challenges too. One of the challenges is we can't lose sight that there's digital poverty, and that there is, you know, a lot of people who an online festival maybe isn't as universally accessible that we would like it to be. From 2019, some data from the ONS actually showed that Northern Ireland has the highest rate of non-internet users in the UK, 14.2%. And of course, that is either due to lack of broadband coverage, particularly in rural areas, but also lack of access to devices, particularly with children and young people from low-income families. Those families are already facing financial strain and job losses due to the pandemic. And we know that since the pandemic has begun and children have been homeschooling, that has become very raw and very clear. Here in Northern Ireland, Education Authority has already loaned over 11,000 devices to pupils in homes in Northern Ireland who did not have access prior to that. So that's again something I think we need to be mindful of, that digital work is not easily accessible for everyone in society, and there's a deep divide there. So our other challenge, to be fair, was pricing as well for events. So going back again to that Culture Beyond COVID research, 71% of people who had engaged with arts and culture in the digital domain had done so free. An audience had reported that they were really happy to pay for live events, but they were events that were new or interactive. So 49% of respondents to that survey said that they were willing to pay for an event that they would not otherwise be able to access if it hadn't been for it being online. So when we came to look at that, we were like, right, our normal ticket price in normal circumstances, whatever normal is ever going to be again, was £10. And I always thought that we were one of the cheapest tickets in town. We were excellent value. But obviously, when you're doing an interactive or online performance, audiences are just not willing to pay as much for an interactive or an online experience as they are for a live in-person event. So we had we did a lot of thinking backwards and forwards about how we could price things, because the Belfast Children's Festival would traditionally have a very large element of the festival would be free anyway, and certainly a lot of our moment are free as well. But I did think it was still important that audiences value theatre work and that they should pay for that, because otherwise how can we ever charge a ticket price again if we give everything away for free? So what we decided was, and again I think a family audience is the most price sensitive of all, so we set a price of £10 for any for per device, for any performance that was either live, interactive, so that you are in the room with the artist on like you're actually, connecting directly with that artist is there in real time performing for you. And we set that at 10. But when it came to the stream performances, we thought we've got to really think about who our competitors are. And to me, our competitors are Netflix and Disney+. So I've set the stream performances at £5. And so it's obviously early days, but I don't know if any of you have seen some of the festival events. We have a little outro to every event that has a QR code. So we've had a little look so far at some of the responses that we've had to that QR code. And audiences are asked about price and about the experience that they've just had and what they felt about the price, if it was a paid for event. And they were asked whether they thought the pricing was about right, whether they would have been prepared to pay more, or whether they thought it was maybe a little expensive. And 60% of people have come back so far to say they felt it was right, and 40% have come back to say that they would have paid more, with only one respondent so far saying that they thought it was expensive. So we've also been encouraging audiences to donate.
Right.
We've also been encouraging, audiences to donate. So, and again, we've had a good response for that, with lots of audiences deciding to add a donation to their basket. So that's been some of the challenges that we've faced so far.
Yeah, it's so great to get all those stats, and I really appreciate you spending the time, because we put these things out into the ether, but it's not until we get the hard data that we think, oh, is this reaching the audiences we want to? I'm just aware of time and allowing an opportunity to bring everybody back together. Thank you, and we'll keep you on board now. Don't turn off your camera. Can I ask the rest of our panel members if you can just switch back on your cameras, and then we might take some questions straight from anybody who is watching now. So please feel free to just put your question in the chat room. That's the best way for us to see and respond straight away. But whilst we're waiting, I might just ask, Evelyn, do you see that for me, there is a slight tension with the direct live active performer streamed event? For me, how do we protect that? This is a question I ask myself. How do we make that available essentially to our local national audience first before somebody in New Zealand starts buying up all those tickets. Do you feel that that's a tension, or you don't worry about it within this space? Do you think?
I think it would be just interesting to see what the actual. I think it'd be interesting to see what the actual booking figures have been, to really see what those audience patterns have been so far. And it is early days to be able to see that. I think certainly when it comes to between our local audiences and the New Zealand audience, the time zone will roll that out to start with. I think a lot of our things are timed for like a early evening or on the weekend, sort of like afternoon things, and they would tend to be more accessible for our local audiences.
But do you feel an essential responsibility towards, audiences in Belfast above and beyond somebody in Bangladesh, for example, or how are you?
Well, I think it's hard to prevent someone from booking something if they want to, but I think how you maybe get over a little of that tension is making sure that there is plenty available for free, and it's good quality stuff that's available for free. So therefore, it doesn't matter where you're watching it from, and hopefully that will mean that our local audiences have plenty of opportunity to be able to engage. But I just say it'll be interesting to see what the actual final audience figures actually turn out to be, because if you're not relevant to your own community, why are you there? Yeah,
I think what's what you're testing very clearly, or is enabling, is multiple platforms of access. You've got films like Rosie that can be accessed anywhere, at any time, in a very user-friendly manner. And then you've got something like Big Telly and Cahoots NI that does require an audience to be seated and responding at a certain time and place in a day. And it'll be interesting where that falls. Okay, here we have a question from Mark. Do the panel think that we will continue a hybrid program into the future, or ignore it when life returns? Evelyn, can you answer that first before we might refer to someone else?
I think my take on that might be slightly different from the artists in the room. Is that obviously I'm a presenter of a festival, and will be largely driven by what my audience wants. So if my audience wants to continue to book things online, we will be reactive to that. And I think that's going to be interesting just to watch how research continues to go. For personally, I'd like to be able to continue a hybrid element, really to have that extension of reach. But I think we just need to be careful that there is a cost to digitisation, and some of the funds that we've been able to draw on to make this festival digitise will not be available there in the future. They've been very much based on emergency money. So I think we've got to think about how we're funding that to keep that going. But I think it would be madness of us not to think about a hybrid element in the future. But I'll be largely driven by what my audiences want to see and buy.
Agree. There's definitely been access to pots of money that none of us would have been able to access in normal times. Zoe, do you have a response to that question at all? Because it seems like you're actually thriving in this kind of particular time, and there's no turning back for Big Telly.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, so we've just been commissioned to make a remote experience for a live immersive experience in London. And the kind of task is to make a remote experience which is completely and utterly different from that live immersive experience. So it's a completely extra thing, which you might choose to do after you've done the live thing, or before you've done the live thing, or instead of the live thing if you happen to be too far away from London. So I think the pressure on that is to make it a completely different thing rather than a video or a stream of what other people are doing. And I think that's a really interesting space to be in, is how can we do something for a remote audience which is a completely different and equally valuable experience, but it's different from a live one, rather than it being a remote copy of a live experience. That's where I'm less interested in it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we've got another question here from Sinead. Is there sectorial digital support or pre-existing digital culture for creators in Northern Ireland, or is it totally individual impulse? Paul, do you want to answer that?
I suppose. Yeah. So from a Cahoots point of view, it was impulse. We didn't find a big pot of money and decide, let's go and make studios. We were lucky enough to be in a position where we were able to manage an element of that ourselves. But there are funders. I mean, I agree with what Evelyn and Zoe have said. I mean, there's a lot of money out there right now to sort of connect into the digital world, but there are platforms as well, you know, that have existed outside of these COVID times. You know, I'm thinking of Future Screens and organisations like that within Northern Ireland that do incredible work to encourage digital artists to create work. You know, organisations like that I wasn't fully aware of, that they were in existence, that we've managed to, you know, start having conversations with. So there are opportunities with funding bodies that have always been in existence, that we can now reconnect with.
Absolutely. And I know the situation is very different across the 4 nations that make up the United Kingdom. Rosie, what's the situation in England for you in regard, was that about accessing money or driven by artist impulse?
So yeah, for us it was definitely artist impulse. I think there are sort of bits of support you can access through the Arts Council England with sort of digital champions, but I think it's very much driven by artists to find the technology and way that they want to present their art. So there's been emergency response funds, but that's not necessarily about making digital art. I think it would be lovely to see a return to, certainly like in the 90s when I was like younger, there was such a screen dance phenomenon that was actually on TV you could watch, and these beautiful, you know, almost blockbuster dance films were there, but there was nothing made for young audiences, and that was something that we've really looked at the last year, is there isn't screen dance being made for young audiences. So I think that's an exciting new development, and I hope it continues. Let's see it on TV.
Yeah, that's so true. Zoe, did you want to say something?
No, I just saw a question in the chat, but maybe you're not coming to that yet.
It is significant, and I'm aware of that. I'm also aware of it hit the end of our time. It's so large. I'm so sorry that we won't be able to ask that. But I want to thank you all so much for the generosity. So if you want to answer in the chat, go ahead, any of the panellists right now. But I just wanted to thank you all very much for sharing. I wish you all the best for the rest of your festival experience. I also want to thank Heather, our signer. You've been fantastic. I apologise again for not introducing you at the beginning of the session. There is a final industry event called Their Place, How Creativity Can Enable Children to Respond to the Pandemic. It's going to be at 4:30 p.m. It's chaired by the Max Senior Curator, Hugh Mulholland, and that's at 4:30, and we can hope you can join us for that. That's only in half an hour's time. So we're getting lots of thank yous. It's been a real pleasure to have this chat. I'm sure, look, we've been in this 1 year. I feel like we're kind of beginning to understand what we're dealing with, and I would love to see where this genre or art form could go. And I think for each of us as artists and festival presenters, we'll be on a very interesting journey with it ourselves. And I think some works absolutely resonate so strongly. And that's the important thing at this time, connecting and communicating with our audiences. So once again, thank you all so much. And thank you everybody listening today. Thank you.